Okay, joining me right now is UFC announcer slash play-by-play commentator slash host of his own podcast, Fist Nation, Brendan Fitzgerald. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a long time, but finally got you on here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me, man. Great to see you.
Good, man. First thing I want to hop in right away, man. Former UFC vet, Paige VanZant. She makes her
Yeah.
bare-knuckle debut at Knuckle Mania. She loses a decision. Are you a fan of bare knuckle, or are you attracted to that sport?
I saw like I didn't watch it tonight because I've been working on my stuff for the show. I don't know. It's like I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, it's too barbaric or whatever. It's like I haven't watched enough to have a strong opinion on it either way. I think as long as like fighters want to get in there and compete, they're going to do it either this way or they're going to do it like unsanctioned or something like that. I mean, it's certainly the next level of crazy, but they're making it happen and they're sanctioning these events, and it's certainly a different things for fight fans to watch.
Yeah, it is definitely different, and a lot of people are attracted to it. A lot of people are turned off by it. It's mixed
Yeah.
results right now, but it almost seems like how MMA first started in many ways.
That's what I mean. Like I don't want to throw stones at it because a lot of the MMA history was just like human cockfighting and they can't do it and this should be illegal. It's like, so for me to not know much about it and then to have a strong opinion on it doesn't make sense. So um glad that fighters are getting an opportunity that they want. Nobody's forcing them to do it. So, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't really watch it too much, and I did watch it when Paige fought, but
Yeah.
one thing great about that is Paige is bringing more eyes to the sport and it's helping it grow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what's next, especially after she lost, right? They
Hmm.
signed this huge name. She's got such a big following, such a large fan base, and then for her to lose her debut, obviously, takes some steam off of, probably what they were hoping for or trying to do. So we'll be interesting to see if they keep chasing other kind of bigger name free agents or, how they try to develop their promotion. But, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. Now, do you watch other combat sports closely, or do you watch other sports closely overall?
The thing is, like with the UFC and like I just love it so much that I go so deep into that. I grew up playing hockey, so I'll watch some hockey here and there. Football, uh, love it. Super Bowl's coming up, and I played football in high school and just a little bit in college, and so I'll sit on a Sunday and watch Red Zone, and since I've started working in sports, once you start working and covering sports, and to me, the higher up you go, the less I don't know. I guess it's different for everybody, but I don't really root passionately for the teams that I root for growing up. To me, it's different, and like you can see the business of it. That's not to say it takes away all joy. It's almost like you see it for what it is, as entertainment. And also the more that you meet people in sports, you realize that there's a person under that helmet, that has a family, that has a life. And so you stop, at least for me, I've stopped being like everything from my hometown team because, when you used to hate the team from New York, but it's like there's probably some really nice guys on
Yeah.
that team from New York. One's from Michigan and he happened to play for the Yankees. His name's Derek Jeter, and I hated him because he was on the Yankees. And now I kind of have a different mindset of just, these are phenomenal athletes doing incredible things, and I have more of an appreciation for everybody that competes at the highest level. And you kind of pull for the personalities that you like and some of the teams that you like, and so that's where I'm at with sports.
I think most people are like that, especially people involved in MMA, because MMA is 365 days, 24 hours a day. It's just you're engrossed in it, and me myself, I cover multiple promotions,
Right.
and even just covering the UFC is a ton of work, like extreme
Yeah.
amount of work. So you don't really have time to invest into other sports. I watch a little bit of the NFL, but other than that, I mean, I'm strictly MMA.
Yeah, I passively enjoy other sports. And one of the things that I love about the job that I have now is that I do get to go super deep on one sport. When I worked, if you work for ESPN in the States, or you just cover sports for a sports network, a lot of times you kind of have to cast a wide net, and you go shallow. You're covering football during football season, hockey during hockey season, baseball in the summer, and so on. And so to be with the UFC, it's almost a lot more fun to really get detailed on the one sport, and you really love it. And you want to know everything about it and know all these people in the sport. And then you can watch football on Sundays. You can watch the NFL. You can watch some playoff action, but not have to know every single thing about it. I really enjoy that.
You're in a unique position because you get to, on a pretty much on a daily basis, get to talk and interact with a lot of people's heroes. You ever thought about that? Like, you're in that kind of position where you're friends with people's heroes.
Yes, I know. It's wild, and it happens accidentally a lot, and it's just kind of strange at how normal it gets. The fact that, like, I stroll into work today and I see Michael Bisping, and it's like, hey, how's the family, whatever, and we'll like joke around and kid and host a show. All right, see you tomorrow. And it's like, people would kill to meet Michael Bisping, to get a handshake, to get an autograph, whatever. I sit next to Daniel Cormier and call fights. I mean, it's incredible, the experience that it is. And the cool thing with the UFC is that all these guys that I work with that are people's heroes and just looked up to by so many people, they're just the nicest guys. I have met some pro sports, athletes, coaches, whatever, where never meet your heroes, right? This guy that you thought was awesome and you watched him on TV, and then you meet him and you're not as impressed, right? Because you see behind the curtain, you see what they're really like. But for these guys, man, I promise you, they're every bit, who they are. And I think MMA produces that, because it allows athletes to be themselves more than any other sport, because they're not playing for a team. If you play for a team, you kind of have to keep in mind your coworkers in the locker room that you have to answer to. And so you might say less in the media. Otherwise, you'll ruffle a lot of feathers. But with MMA, they can be truly who they are, and people love them for it. And sometimes you hate them for it, and you gravitate to who you like. And that's one of the cool parts about, an individual sport in general, but especially a sport like MMA.
Yeah, and also you mentioned Bisping. I saw that you posted something about the new studio at the Apex. It looks slick. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the new studio they installed it in January. It's in the room where, since they opened the Apex for the Contender Series in 2019 it was, they always had the space and the plan for that to be a studio, and to have fully functional control rooms on the second floor, and to have a production space in addition to the Octagon and Contender Series. So it was just a matter of time before they got it up and running. And it definitely, with no pandemic, would have been up and functioning last year. But obviously, with all the events we had to stage at the Apex, we just needed certain spaces, and we just needed to keep the show going. So with this break after December 19th, obviously the holidays, Fight Island in January, it allowed them the time to fully install the studio. It's great, man. It's similar to the Fox Sports studio that we used to go to in LA. It's smaller, but they have the same elements, the video screens on the walls. It's a versatile space for not being very big, which is key when you want to put a lot of content out. You want it to have different looks. We have the desk look for kind of the studio shows, the pre-fight show, the post-fight show. You got a screen on one side that's movable. You could probably turn it into an interview set pretty easily. And then there's like a series of screens on another wall that we'll be able to graphically do some really cool stuff with. So I'm excited, and I know fight fans are going to love it, because we're going to start cranking a bunch of stuff out of there.
Yeah, it seems like it. Could you give us anything, can you tell us anything about what you guys are producing?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, so the pre-fight show, as long as we're at the Apex, the pre-fight shows, the post-fight shows are going to be out of there. Instead of being on kind of the ledge looking over the Octagon, we'll go into this studio starting this week. I think they did a show today with it. And, On the Line, our gambling show on Fight Pass, that's going to be out of there as well. And, Fight Pass and just the UFC in general, we're looking to make more content, not less. So I know that there's some plans in the works, but honestly, I don't know them. I don't know exactly the master plan. I'm sure we'll have meetings about it and probably pitch some ideas and certain stuff like that. But I'd tell you if I could. And if I knew, I'd try to give a little something of a hint, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm excited as everybody else is.
Yeah, sometimes it's better not to know,
You know, it's
sometimes.
funny. I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, it'll be interesting. They'd be like, "Hey, we're going to start this show. You're going to host it." Like, okay, cool.
Mhm.
That sounds like fun. So we'll just have to see how they attack it.
A few years back, when you first started, what were the nerves like? Because I've done commentating before myself, and it was for some small show, and I was
Yeah.
completely nervous, and nobody was watching. But you're stepping into this arena where thousands and thousands of people watching live.
Yeah. So, the Contender Series, I think that the biggest thing that you want when you go on TV is you want to have confidence. You want to have confidence in your ability. You want to have confidence in what you're talking about. And I have confidence in my ability after working in broadcasting for so long before I started with the UFC. I think I was on air for, 9 years at the time. So I was comfortable in front of the camera, but no matter what, in different jobs that you go to, you're always nervous on your first show. It doesn't matter. Like I've worked in Boston, and then I go to ESPN, and your first show, you're just working with a new set of people. You're working with new analysts. You're in a new studio space. You're probably talking about something different in this job, and you just don't know how people feel about you yet. You're not like ingrained as part of the crew. So those nerves were there because I was new. And then like MMA was new to me a few years ago. Like I had known the crossover fights and the Conor McGregor's, the Ronda Rousey's, that sort of thing, but I wasn't neck deep in it because I was always working on another job. I was covering college football. Well, that's on Saturdays. That's 12 hours on Saturdays of watching nothing but college football. So I didn't have time to watch UFC because it interfered with my other job. So I think the biggest nerves that I had was like, I'm trying to fit in. I don't want to overstep. But the thing is that I loved the sport. So it wasn't a chore for me to learn it. It wasn't like, I guess I'll learn about this and then go back to following sports. My boss told me like after that first show in Fresno, he's just like, this is your NFL now. So like, you got to really cover it. And I was just like, dude, I'm already there. Like, you don't have to tell me that, like I'm in, like I'm like in this rabbit hole of Fight Pass, just like watching every event, like loved it right away from the minute I started calling Contender Series. But yeah, the first one in Fresno in December of 2017, my first UFC card. Yeah, man, I didn't think I was going to be nervous because I was working with Felder. We had already known each other, already got to learn the crew and kind of felt like part of the crew after a season of Contender Series. But it hit me on fight day, man. I got really, really nervous. It kind of dawned on me how much bigger that broadcast was. Instead of being on UFC Fight Pass for a Contender Series show that's 2 hours long, I was going to be 6 hours on FS1. I had never hosted or been part of a broadcast that had over 1 million viewers. We had over 1 million viewers that night. Had never hosted a show continuously for 6 hours. I mean, it's quite an undertaking. So I freaked out, stayed as calm as I could, whatever, just had to kind of sit down in a quiet place. And, I knew that once the show started, we'd be fine. It's just the build up that's really tough, which, I think a lot of fighters feel that too. It's not once you're in the octagon, it's the 4 weeks before when you got to get ready for this fight every day and think about it. So yeah, that was it for me, man. It was nerve wracking.
You hit the ground running when you started off with the UFC. It was very smooth, the way that you do your commentating, and it wasn't like someone that was new to the sport. Sometimes you get guys come in that are new to the sport. You could kind of tell, but for yourself, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, so I appreciate you saying that. And, this is a good message for young broadcasters, I think, no matter what they end up covering is, when I started out, I tell people all the time, it's like, I don't know how familiar you are with the United States, but I started out in a small city in Wyoming. That's cowboy country. That is the middle of nowhere. It's a town of 50,000 people with 2.5 hours surrounding it of nothing in every direction. Couple of high schools, a junior college, like no big time pro sports. And to be from a city, to be from Boston in a city with pro sports and all that other stuff, and then to be put into this very rural area and cover sports that I had never watched before, like rodeo is a sport. I had to show up at a rodeo film guys riding bulls and cover it as a sport. And, you know, for as much as you want to skip over that kind of thing when you get your start, when you're trying to build whatever you're getting into, whatever you go through there is going to help you in the long run. And I was told that, like, you know, by like an executive when I was early in my career. He's like, you know, you are going to be so much better off by the fact that you're trying to fit in. You're covering sports that you don't really know about. You're in a city where you don't know people, but you have to fit in, and you have to look the part, sound the part, figure it out. So, you know, I've covered like high school track meets and, you know, girls volleyball at a low level and rodeo, as I mentioned, and just all these like kind of weird things. So when it came to like covering weird things or just stuff that was not in my lane, I had done it a bunch before. And, you know, so the versatility of my skill set was already there. It was just applying it to different sports. And with MMA, it was just like, okay, like you start knowing how to cover something. Like, who are the big players? Like, if you're covering the NFL, who are the big teams? Who are the best players? Who are the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes? Who are the upstarts? Who are the exciting, you know, prospects that people are like, oh, I think this guy's going to be good. I think this team is coming along. All right, well, you apply it to MMA. Who are the big stars? Cowboy Cerrone, Frankie Edgar, Conor McGregor, the worldwide superstars. Who's the Sean O'Malley, the guy that people are excited about? Who's the Francis Ngannou, the guy that people, you know, you can apply those themes to any sport, you know, and once you kind of like see that formula and see how to tell a story, then you really can kind of fit in. And it helps when you really love what you're watching and what you're studying. And so that obviously was a big thing in my favor too.
I love hearing those stories, the intricacies of someone's career before you kind of before they hit your radar, right? And I feel like a lot of people, when they first saw you in the UFC, you know, MMA community, it's not like the friendliest community online.
I was warned. I know. I was warned, but like that, I guess that kind of contributed to the nerves a little bit. The fact that I don't know how much I thought of it. I wasn't really scared of it because I was just like, well, this is a job. What am I going to do? Say no? You know, what am I going to do? Be like, nah, the fans online I've heard are tough, so I'm not going to do that job. It's like, no, man, I had a family to feed and I was in between jobs, and cool, let's give this a try. Sounds like fun. I think it might be something that I'm into. And, you know, in my opinion, like the MMA fans have been great to me, you know? So I think that obviously, I think what it is MMA fans are really, really passionate about their sport. You know, it's a smaller club than other sports. You know, you turn on football, like my wife's like grandmother watches football. You know, she watches the NFL and she's got it's just such a wide thing. It's everybody's sport. But with the MMA, it's not everybody's sport if Conor McGregor's not fighting. You know, it's our sport. And they want you to know what you're talking about. They want you to care as much as they do, or else it's insulting. And I felt that way with hockey. You know, hockey is a sport that even in the United States, in Canada, it's obviously huge, it's whatever. But even in the United States, where we have a lot of NHL teams and it's still a big sport in plenty of areas of the country, there are plenty of areas of the country too that don't know much about hockey. And it would always bother me when somebody would be on TV when I was a kid that clearly didn't really grow up with hockey or know about it, and they're talking about it. That didn't rub me the right way. So going into MMA, I already knew what those fans were thinking. And I wasn't going to sit here and try to fake it. You know, like the fact that it's genuine certainly helps me out. And if I didn't like it as much, then who knows? I probably wouldn't be as good at it. I'd probably get a lot of guff. And then they probably would have kept their search going for another broadcaster if it didn't work out. But luckily, it's the other way.
Yeah, man, you're doing great. And now when you look at the commentary teams, there's the 2-man team versus the 3-man team. Is there one that you prefer over the other?
I mean, I know it depends. I mean, the 3-man team is generally, I guess I'd have to say I prefer the 3-man team. I think that, and I couldn't tell you like I prefer me with this guy and this guy. Like I don't have that sort of preference because I love working with all of them. And the 3-man team to me, it just offers a lot of advantages. It offers the fighters being able to bounce ideas off of one another. And I think for the fans, that makes for a really interesting thing. the fact that if Paul Felder and Dom Cruz can go back and forth and kind of play off each other with what they're seeing, that's something where if I'm sitting next to just Paul, I can't really do that to that same level. So I can't give as nuanced, my job is not to give analysis. So if Paul is there to give analysis and Dom Cruz is there to give analysis, and they can kind of go back and forth and see different things, then I think the fans get a lot more out of it. And then also, 3-man, you get to speak less, which is kind of nice because it's tough to talk for 5 hours, 6 hours at high energy calling these fights and then have your most important fight be your last one. You want your voice to be good for that. That's going to be maybe most often the biggest moment of the night in terms of the stakes for what happens, right? That's the highest ranked fighters. That's the biggest names on the card. So you want to be at the top of your game, and being in a 3-man booth allows you to keep more gas in the tank for that main event, for those last couple of fights, the co-main event, the main card in general, as opposed to 2-man when it's like if the analyst isn't talking, I'm talking, and there's a lot more there's a lot more on the shoulders of the play-by-play guy.
Yeah, right now I think it's at an all-time high with you and John Gooden and Anik and DC, both DCs, Felder, Bisping. You really have a good connection with Bisping and Felder. So whenever you guys work the 2-man team, it's always phenomenal. I always hear good things online, everything. You probably see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people, like, it's nice to get those compliments that we have great chemistry. I think, when it comes to working with Felder and Bisping, like, I see the compliments online and I appreciate those. And the fact that, we can joke around with each other, I think is good. Like, I always have prided myself in wanting to get along with whoever I'm on TV with. And, for the most part, it's like I haven't had to force anything. It's just I got into this job partly because I, wanted to just hang with my buddies and talk sports. And that's exactly what we get to do, and obviously have a connection with Felder. We're similar in age, and we started on the Contender Series at the same time. He's from Philadelphia. I'm from Boston. We're kind of from the same type of city and that sort of thing. And then Bisping's just a one-of-a-kind personality, and he's very funny. And I think we're both self-deprecating in our humor. We know when to, like, throw in a funny line and laugh at something, and then when to, like, get down to business and call a fight. And I'm glad that people seem to be laughing along, because obviously we don't see or hear anybody laughing along at home. You just have to hope that if we're laughing, you guys are too. And I think a lot of people appreciate a little humor in their fight broadcasts.
Definitely love the humor and love the technical breakdowns that the fighters bring in. Yeah. And then you guys find your spots in between, and it's just, it works. The flow is great, with all you guys, it seems like. It's hard to complain about the commentary anymore, because before a lot of people had complaints about, I don't know, the technical side. I think a lot of people were talking about that.
Oh, like there wasn't as much detail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but now it's like endless.
Oh, I mean, and like Joe Rogan knows his stuff, but he never fought in the UFC. So it's, there is that level that, those guys are going to bring that fans can respect, because, and another cool thing is that, so many of our crew, it's not like they've just fought in the UFC. Like, they are fighting in the UFC. Paul Felder's calling shows and he's booking a main event. And Dom Cruz just fought for the title last year again. And, Bisping and DC are recently retired, especially DC, where it's like people just watch them. Imagine if, like, Tom Brady's like playing a game one weekend and then he's in the booth, like, telling you stuff the next week. That's a very cool part of our sport that other sports can't really do as much as we can.
Any awkward moments interviewing a fighter, or any awkward moments cage side that you remember?
Man, I'm guess I'm lucky where I haven't really had one yet. Awkward moments. I don't do the in-octagon interviews. Hopefully someday I will. I imagine I will at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. But because we have, obviously great guys that can do that. So I think awkward moments kind of happen in that case, right? When you're trying to walk away and then the guy wants to grab you to say something else or whatever. And I'm just sitting outside like, hey man, I'll take it back when you guys are done. So, I can't really think of anything super awkward. I guess I guess I've been lucky in that sense. And a lot of times if we mess up or stumble or something, it's like, in your head you messed up or you said something that you didn't want to say the right way, but most of the people watching would never even realize it. So, knock on wood, haven't really had anything, unless you can think of anything. But off the top of my head, I think I would remember a super embarrassing moment. It's just like, you just make some missteps or, say the wrong name once in a while or something like that. I guess the worst thing that I've done, or the thing that I get reminded of the most, or that is when Darren Till was making his walk in Liverpool. So it was kind of a high profile spa. It was a big moment for him. And I was just so into that moment. I still, it was only 6 months in at that point. And I think I said 17 wins, 0 losses, 1 defeat, because I meant to say 1 draw, but I said defeat. So people were like, I don't get that. They're just like, whatever. It's just the slip of a tongue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're on live TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
live TV for 6 hours a pop, man. There's not a lot of people in the TV business that do that. Even like when I worked for news stations, like, if there's breaking news and we're just on covering something, they'll switch out the news anchors every 2 to 3 hours. They'll keep them fresh. They'll put them on for 3 hours. They'll give them a break for a half hour, an hour, or something like that. So, what we do is like, not to like toot our own horn or pat us on the back, but it is a different job than any other that I've had.
Yeah, a lot of fans and even myself, sometimes I don't think about that. I don't think that you guys been sitting there for 6 hours. I don't think about the hours and hours of prep that you guys have to do to kind of remember, because I have a terrible memory. So when I see you guys, I know you guys have stuff written out, but a lot of that stuff is coming off memory, right?
Yeah, we got a lot of cheat sheet. I think, obviously the notes, we can have a stack of notes. You don't want to have too much because you don't want to be rifling through stuff and not see it. But you obviously want to be prepared with a lot of information. But, when this is your job and when you pour yourself into it and you're following it week to week and, you've called like this guy's last 3 fights, then a lot of it is memory. The fact that like you'll see this guy and then you'll call his next fight and then 6 months later you've called his next, a lot of that stuff will go in the memory bank and you don't have to write everything down or read from a sheet. It's part of knowing, and it's incredible the amount of information that you can store up here if you're kind of in tune to what's going on and you put away something that might be useful in the future. And like funny stories that you remember about them, or just like experience that you've had, like you remember, because it was a lot easier when we were traveling, because you can be like, yes, he fought in Sweden. I remember that because it was this trip when I flew on this, airplane and stopped through this city, and this was the hotel and this was the restaurant we ate at that was really good. You can like place a lot of things. You asked me something from the Apex last year. I couldn't tell you if it was in May or if it was in December. I mean, it's just all together because we're just cranking them, just cranking them out. It's like, did he fight in June or did he fight in October? You just don't know. And so, that's been a little more challenging now. But ultimately, you can still kind of piece it together.
You must be eager to have everything open back up so you can travel, because that's one of the perks of being a commentator for the UFC. You can go all around the world.
Dude, like, where are you in South Korea?
I'm in Seoul.
Yeah. I mean, Busan was awesome. I got to go to Busan and call play-by-play, see the Korean Zombie, get a knockout in his home country. I mean, it's incredible. You rack up some airline miles. You get to see the world, Like, I love travel and I love watching travel shows, and like I've always loved that. And traveled abroad a couple of times in my life to Europe and stuff, but like, I was never going to go to Santiago, Chile, probably. I was probably, I don't know if I was going to make it to New Zealand. I would have loved to, but it's like, we only have so long in life. You only have so many dollars to spend on your vacations and travel time and your kids and school and all that other stuff. And the fact that this is my gig to get to go and do that is incredible. Now, it'll be good when it opens back up, but the silver lining is at home with the family, man. A lot more time at home instead of taking off on a Wednesday and coming back on a Sunday night and being gone for 3.5 full days. I'm at home all week. On a Friday, I, eat dinner at home, and then I come down and do my COVID test and stay in a hotel one night, and I'm back at home on Saturday night, after the show. Like, the show's going to end tomorrow at 8 o'clock or so Vegas time. By 9 o'clock, I'm going to be back at home and see my wife, before we go to bed. So there's a silver lining to it, and if you can't change it, then you might as well enjoy it for what it is.
Definitely. Have you ever had any like starstruck moments?
Not in terms of fighters, and I think that a reason for that is because I wasn't a super fan all the way up. It's intimidating when you put somebody on a pedestal for years and then you're face to face with them. So when I was traveling around the country and working in different jobs, and just wondered if I could ever cover sports back home in Boston one day, cover the Patriots and the Red Sox and all the teams that I loved growing up. And then I did. And so all of a sudden I'm going to work at Fenway Park, and I'm like, talking to David Ortiz, who I was like in college, just staying up until 1 a.m, seeing that they could win the World Series. Like, he's making the big hits. And now all of a sudden I'm interviewing him. And, even though you get used to it and whatever, there's a different feeling to that than, Stephen Thompson, who okay, awesome guy, awesome athlete, whatever. But it's not, I didn't know I wasn't like, oh my God, Stephen Thompson, and now I'm interviewing him. It was much different than that. So I haven't been starstruck. Certainly the big personalities, they carry a certain presence with them. Like, I've seen Conor McGregor in person and stuff, but I've never had to actually interview him. And guys that, Habib and stuff, if I sat down face to face with them, I think I'd be able to hold it together and stuff. But man, when you are talking with athletes of a certain level, there is a different aura to it. I've asked Tom Brady some questions, and when he looks at you, you're just like, you just understand, this guy is as famous as one can be on this planet. So when you're talking to somebody like that, it's a very different thing. But they're a person just like we all are. They do what they love. They make a living. They have a family, and so I think they appreciate it when you can treat them like that.
Yeah, even in my experience, I've talked to many high-level famous athletes, and that's one thing you learn from interviewing them is they're just normal people. They just can't do something extraordinary. That's it.
When I first met Paul Felder, and he's not this huge megastar, especially a few years ago, he was, the broadcasting has helped his fight career and vice versa. Not that he was an unknown, but just that he was still punching his way up. And he had just beat Stevie Ray in Scotland, and then he flew from there, and we did the Contender Series a few days later. But to not know UFC fighters and to not really be in this world, and then to be talking to a guy that I just watched on TV 2 days before just elbow somebody into the ground for a knockout win. And then, our kids are in similar age. And so we're talking about this Elmo video that our kids like to watch on YouTube when it's time to brush their teeth. It was just so wild. I'm just like, this badass UFC fighter just elbowed this dude, knockout, first round, the most badass thing one can do. And me and him are talking about an Elmo YouTube video because our kids like it. It just slapped me in the face with, man, we're all just a bunch of people trying to do the best we can with our families and what we love to do.
Yeah, that's definitely true. One more thing before I let you go, man. We've been, of course, Mexico City.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of put you on the map a little bit. And there's a bunch of, I Googled it and I YouTubed it, and there's a bunch of videos out there of it. And you staying out of, I guess, out of the way of an attack, and then still being able to do play-by-play, man. It was something that everybody appreciated from you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I think some people call me a wimp, but more people I think are laughed along with me. Believe me, I'm laughing at myself and I'm laughing at the whole situation because, things like that aren't good. It's not good when that happens, but as long as there's no major injuries and whatever, it's okay, there's some beer on your stuff, there's some beer on your shoulder, and maybe your night gets a little dampened if you're in the crowd and you didn't expect to get a beer thrown all over you. But yeah, man, I mean, I just knew that we basically, it comes down to this. I wasn't truly scared of anything, but you also never know. You got a bunch of angry drunk people. They could throw a phone. They could throw a shoe. They, whatever. You're a sitting duck down there on the floor if there's really people that just are mad and throwing stuff. So ultimately I knew that it was just probably a bunch of beer and water and soda that was being thrown, and it's nothing really to get worked up over. But at the same time, if I'm supposed to be the voice of reason that's talking us through the situation on the air, and we're not going to go to commercial, which I knew we shouldn't go to commercial, then you got to like talk your way through it. And the best way to talk your way through it is to stay calm so that you can kind of like whatever. And so to me, the best way to stay calm was to not, even if it doesn't hurt, if you just have something splash all over you, like you were hit with a water balloon, then you're going to react to it. You're going to breathe different. Your voice is going to be different. You won't be able to like talk your way through it. So I just figured get under the table and be covered on 3 sides and be able to look out and just kind of talk through the situation. It calmed down in like a minute, got back up, and we got in for the official decision of the no contest. And, it's just wild, like what it turned into. I get like in the moment, it just felt like the smart thing to do. Then even after that, I was just like, oh, that was kind of wild, But then like, I guess I didn't realize that the blogs would pick it up and that it would then you get websites that aren't even MMA websites. Then it becomes clickbait. Then it becomes UFC announcer takes cover at a riot in Mexico. And then it becomes like this thing like on TMZ and whatever. And so it's kind of funny that it turned into that. And I think the best thing to do with that is to make light of it, to just laugh at yourself along with everybody else. And because if you start getting defensive over it, then people smell blood in the water and they'll go after you even more. So, yeah, man, that's I say I hope it doesn't end being the biggest moment of my career. But for now, I think you have to say it is the biggest moment of my career. Certainly the most noteworthy thing that I've done with the UFC. But, hopefully we can add some more moments to that.
Well, you did the smart thing because you don't, like you just mentioned, you don't know what they're going to throw. They could throw a bottle, a glass bottle. Imagine that hitting your face.
I don't think they sell glass bottles at arenas like that. You know what I mean?
But you never, I don't know. That's what I was thinking.
A flask, who knows? I've been at Fenway Park in Boston. I saw like, a White Sox fan, a road fan come into the bleachers, and the guy took his shoes off and he was drunk and he threw his shoes at the guy from like 10 rows back, and it's just like, somebody lobs a shoe, you catch it the wrong way, like that can hurt, it can cut, whatever, and I was just like, a phone is a projectile, man. Yeah. So you just never know, and I wasn't going to mess with it.
Better to be under the table than getting knocked out by someone's phone, right?
Right.
It's just, that's a bad scene. But yeah, I thought you handled it perfectly. The best anybody can handle it. But like you said, people are going to watch it the way that they want to watch it, the way that they perceive it. But yeah, man, I'm pretty sure you got many more years of chances to just top that event.
Yeah, right. Hopefully we don't have to go under the table again. But, I think the thing about MMA is everybody seems to have a funny moment.
Yeah.
Like everyone has that quirky, funny moment, So that one's mine so far. Yeah, but it's a sport that creates those kind of great iconic moments of athletic competition. And it's also a sport that creates just like bloopers. I mean, it happens in every sport, but in MMA, it just seems like the bloopers kind of stick out a little bit more. And I guess I'm happy to have a blooper where everybody else is safe and I'm safe and we can all laugh about it.
Take a move in the ring. You can hit me with a word you fling.